few words first. Yeah.
Setting up meeting.
Hi, by the way.
Okay. So we are now live.
You too.
This is day 6,321. And yet everybody is after finding cures to the virus. I'm just kidding. So we are live.
You want this?
Thank you for tuning in.
I don't know if you should use it, but
Developer Circle event. This event will be held by Linda, a great friend of mine who has a very good experience. I can take off my. I just had it for cracking a joke.
We're so used to.
Like, oh, there are only 3 people in the room, so it's okay. So Linda had a very nice experience with the software company, and
a very bad and very nice.
In a very bad and a very nice, both of them. And therefore, I asked her to come and speak in Developer Circle Factory so that we can learn something from her experience. Stage is all yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Aemal. Yeah, but that's very true. I have both sides of the scale when hiring software developers. And if the scale is how professional and good working the developers are, I have been on both of the sides. So it's black and white. I don't know how it's like in between, but yeah. So I wrote this piece about it, my experiences when I built my MVP. And it ended up being a pretty big article, and Aemal saw the article, and then Aemal asked me to come and do this talk about it. And I would love to do that because I really, really enjoy this subject, and I think it's super important because it was really, really tough to hire the wrong software developers. And if you don't know, it's also a lottery, like it can happen, but there are certain things that you can think about to at least minimize the risk. So that's what this piece and this talk is about. So it's for specifically startups, people that want to build an MVP, that don't know code, they're not so tech savvy. I don't know about you guys if you do code yourself. I certainly do not. I cannot write one single string of any code whatsoever or read it or anything. So I'm totally dependent on software developers. And I didn't have a massive budget either. Because if you do, you can just, set up your office and take in-house developers, and then all is fine and dandy, maybe. But I couldn't do that, so I was dependent on a nice software house. That's just the way it is. It's a harsh reality. So I wanted to tell you my personal story about that. So mind you, this is really from the bottom of my heart and my experiences and what happened in my MVP. Doesn't apply to maybe everyone, but in this case, it was certainly really important. And also some points that you can think about when choosing a dev house, also when writing the contract. And then I would love to, if we can just do with, now we're so few people. So it's, like we said before also, it's so much nicer and cozier and more value coming out from if we have some discussions around the topics also. And I really, really love this topic, and I would love to learn and hear about your stories and your experiences. And if you say, no, but Linda, you're totally wrong, that's fucked up, you should do it like this, then please tell me. So I am a product photographer. I have a background, I don't do it anymore, but I used to do it. And I had a really, really nice, super cool studio in the deep forests of Sweden. You haven't been, but we should go one day. Outside of Gothenburg on the southwest coast. And I was there alone every day and doing my photo shootings for really nice clients. And I loved it, really, really. I had my dog with me. It was really nice, everything. But I felt alone. And I also started to get sick about the fact that I'm working for 1 hour, I get paid for 1 hour. There was nothing that I could do to really scale up. Sure, I can hire more photographers, get more jobs, but that doesn't classify as a scalable thing. So I started thinking about that. How can I make this into something bigger? And how can I apply the learnings I have as a product photographer? Because I was taught by one of the top photo studios in Sweden, which had experience since before Photoshop existed. And I knew that some photographers were working really weirdish, and they can do it in a much nicer way. So I thought I put all of this into a two-sided platform, put everything online, and then I opened this up for photographers and brands worldwide. So I pinned down the idea. Everything was going to be totally digital. So it was for photographers worldwide and sustainable brands worldwide, because I want to promote sustainable products and services and not junk. But so like organic, if it's organic or vegan or part of a circular economy, or in any way a fair trade, or promoting a more environmentally friendly future. So I call the product Fair Photo Agency. So it was about the photographer signing up, a brand signing up, the brand added a job. I need this type of photographer for this type of job. And then various photographers all around the world can pitch for that job and say, hey, but I live here, I live up the mountains. It would be pretty cool to do it here. I have this rate and this is me, stuff like that. And it was quite nice for the job requesters also, or the brands, that they could see the different pitches coming in. It's super fun. And then there was heaps of functionalities and heaps of steps here. You finally pick your photographer, that one wins, and then you get your own project room and you can then work together. So the photographer would upload a proof of images, and the brand can say, oh, more like this and more like so, and then choose what photos she wanted, download, pay, rate. Very condensed, it was a lot more steps, but so you get an overview of how it was working. And I had a couple of hundred photographers worldwide, really nice ones, and also had jobs going.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, no.
To make it more conversational. So you had still your studio and you launched the platform.
Exactly.
So you were one of the freelancers on the platform as well?
Actually, I wasn't. I haven't thought about that. So weird. I had never signed up myself because I was so working like with the platform that I didn't. I wanted to step out of doing photo shooting, like just a little bit, but taking care of the clients that I have, but not actually scaling it. But yeah, good point. But anyway, so I pitched it to the VC of my city, and they loved it. They entered as investors. So I got 40,000 euros, and then I got another 20,000 grants, and then I took another 20,000 as a company loan. So I had 80,000 on my hands, and I was like, shit, this is actually gonna happen. This is so cool, you know, the feeling. You wake up 5 o'clock every morning and you're like, please, alarm, ring, so I can just jump into my computer and continue working on this thing. You know, it's not a lot of money if you compare it to Silicon Valley terms or Berlin terms, but for my city outside of Gothenburg, it was a lot. So I was, of course, excessively happy. So I was like, okay, let's execute this thing. Let's do it. And for that, I need to find the best possible software house. And that's the story where it starts for you guys, more interesting maybe. Maybe the first problem, or the first mistake I should say that I did, is what I only looked in Sweden, because obviously I speak English, but at the time, this was 4 years ago, I hadn't been speaking a word in English for 10 years. I felt like, I want to erase like the mistakes, the risk of making mistakes or misunderstandings happening. I've heard a lot of really nasty stories about people hiring people in India, for example. And I was like, no, let's stay within Sweden. I know the culture and all that. So I pinned down a step-by-step guide in Swedish then with all the steps that I mentioned before, how the platform is going to work, what functionalities I need, like really rigorous and detailed. You don't have to be so detailed maybe, because it also needs to be like flexible and open, but just because you're detailed doesn't mean that you're not willing to change stuff. But for me, that was really helpful, because it was helping my developers or the software houses that I was talking to understanding my product and my needs better. Then you can change stuff.
So what did you use to sketch out your wireframes or whatever stuff?
Yeah, no, I didn't do it like, I didn't do a dummy. I just pinned it down in like a Word document.
Okay.
So this is happening, and then under there it's other things happening, and then you have these functionalities.
Based on user stories that a user should be able to.
Yeah, exactly. So these 2 years and the photographer and the brand. Yeah. And that, I think, helped me a lot to also pin down my own thoughts, but obviously also to find the right developer. And then I did find a really nice, really cool developer house in outside of Stockholm, in Sweden then. And I was talking to a few, but I choose these guys because they were really cozy, small house. There were like 9 people working there. They were all my age. We bonded. I felt like, Jesus, these are my friends. Like, this is so nice. Yeah, I really love them. And yeah, the developer, he was vegan and everything. So we were like, not that it should matter in any way, but I think it's an unconscious thing that you feel like, oh, but now we have been talking so much and we have been seeing each other so much. Now these guys need to get the project done. But then I also looked at the reference list, of course, and I saw that they had built a platform, 2-sided platform also for creatives and brands. So I was like, yeah, if you've done that, it wasn't as advanced as the one that I had in mind, but they had still done it, and they had heaps of really nice ideas and stuff. So I was like, yeah, what can go wrong, you know? So they started working on the MVP. And after only like 2 or 3 weeks, they showcased me this dummy of a front end. And it was super good. I was like, wow, 3 weeks and you already did all of this? But it was just it was just dummy. I couldn't click anywhere. There was no functionalities. It was absolutely no backend. It was something that anyone could do in like 2 hours. I know now, but they showed me this for a client that is absolutely zero tech savviness. Looks like there's a lot. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? How did you contract like a fixed price project for X amount and fixed deadline or per hour basis?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm coming to that later, but it was a deadline, 3.5 months.
Okay.
And then it was a fixed price. Okay. So we know, I felt for my security, we had to have that settled before, because otherwise how can you do a budget? Like, so you do that, and then you can also be smart and try to, before you write the contract, and try to get a good deal for the hourly rate after that. Because if you do it after you have written the contract, then the developers know that, oh yeah, but you're already our client, so you have to pay this fee, which could be much higher. So yeah, it's a good tip. But yeah, so 2-3 weeks or so was just amazing. But after that, not so good, because then they showcased me the backend stuff. They were like, okay, Linda, so we did this page here. You can go in and have a look, and now you can test also signing up as or register as a photographer and a client, and blah blah blah. We did this and that. I was like, whoa, so cool. I went in, I did it, and then there was a 404 page. And I was like, but you told me that this is done, but still I'm getting to a 404. Don't you check this before you tell the client that it's done? Like, they were like, oh no, but it will work tomorrow. And then that was the continuous pattern. Not everything, they also built a lot, but pretty important things like signing up. You can't do anything. You have to sign up first to be able to go to the other steps. And if that's not working, no matter how much you have behind that, this doesn't matter. Like, you cannot use the product anyway. But the most worrying part to me was that, okay, so he came back to me the next day and he said, okay, I fixed this now. It's not a 404 page anymore. It's all good. And it was fine. But then something that was working before was not working. So it was always like that, to fix something, and something that worked yesterday is all of a sudden not working anymore. So it's like one bug fixed, 2 new bugs coming. It's, yeah. So it was obviously a shit project for them. They had taken water above the head, as we say in Swedish. So it was too advanced for them, but it was obviously really hard to admit that as a developer. And I understand that. So they were starting to, after now it's like 2-3 months, so pretty close to the deadline. They started to be like not answering the phone, not answering my emails. It took days and days of wait. My VCs started to be really annoyed. I started to be really worried. Was Christmas coming and people were sick. The developer that was the key developer for this, he was sick a lot.
The vegan?
Huh?
The vegan?
Yeah, exactly. Not because of that, though. I'm pretty sure it was an excuse that they said. Another excuse was that the CEO got a kid. And since there was such a small company and this was one of the bigger projects that they had, he was also involved a lot. So there was some decisions that he couldn't do. And then he had to be home with a kid because something happened with the kid. And it was like, I get all of that. That's all nice. But I mean, those are things that you could have, taken into account when you told me 3.5 months deadline. You know, you're going to get a kid. You know, Christmas is coming. So, yeah. But that happens, and that's fine. It's just, it can happen once, all good. If it happened 2, 3, 4, 5 times, not so good anymore. So the 3.5 months became 8 months. Yeah, you can only imagine what that does to a company. You can only imagine how frustrated my VCs were. And you can only imagine how worried and frustrated I was. And I was totally losing my whole motivation on this. So I was like, okay, I realized they're just not going to be able to do it. Maybe they will in another 4 months or so, but I have to have it now. And the thing was that I won a competition, or I got to the final of a pitch competition in Sweden called Venture Cup. And that was in May. And I really wanted to have it launched before that so I can announce it. And this was like four weeks before that. And I was realizing that it's just not going to happen with these guys. So I had to take a decision to just try and quit it. And it's not an easy way how you quit a contract like that. When I paid them half of it already or a bit more. So they had built maybe 60%. They said they built 80. But if you take the bucks into account, it was more like 60. And I wanted to pay 60% and not 100% because I didn't have a finished product that I could use. I couldn't earn money on it. And I needed some money for the new developers. So this was a really, really rough time. So I investigated on a new software house that I could use. And this time I looked outside of Sweden. I was like, the best software house in the world. Rapido can take the project rescue now. And then I was a bit lucky, I think also. Not only luck, but I knew what to not look for when choosing the next house now. So I ended up in Poland. And that was higher risk for me. I've never hired foreign developers before. This time it would be in English, obviously. They had a really good rate on Clutch, and they have been building really nice things. And also they were 70 people working there on the same roof. They're 120 now. And I thought...
For those who are listening, maybe you can explain what's Clutch. It's a review platform. Yeah,
it's a review platform. I think it's only for software developers. So clients can also go in and leave the reviews and give videos about their experiences. You get like an interview afterwards from one staff from the Clutch that ask you a lot of things, and then they publish that video. So I didn't know about that before either. So I was like, I had to make like a decision in 2 days. So I was like, okay, go for it. So I hired this Polish bureau, and they taught me how to do it. They taught me how professional software developers are working, that they are actually using project management tools, and they include the client, stuff like that. It was pretty big differences that I will talk about later also. And they launched the whole thing in 3.5 weeks. To me, that was like, why didn't I go to you guys first? Yeah. Because they made it into a project rescue, because it was such a big house with so many employees. They had a team that could go on and take it already. They had their own quality assurance. I know now, like, how you should work on a thing like this, how you're supposed to launch MVPs and how you're supposed to not do it.
So they spent 3.5 weeks on the top of 60% that was done.
Yeah, exactly. So you can come in. Welcome. Yeah, no worries. It's okay. So yeah, so I had a code with 60% of my MVP, and that's pretty much it. And then I gave it to them here. Can you fix this? They say it's a project rescue. We have to look at these things first. I have to pay like 100 euros for them to check these things, to evaluate whether or not they could actually work with it. And I thought, well, that's maybe a little bit strange, but yeah, whatever. But I realize now that, of course, they need to do that, and it was very well invested money. So yeah, they had that code, and then they built upon that code, and then they launched the things that they fixed the bugs that the previous had built, and then they just fixed those bugs. That was pretty impressive, I think, based on not building it from the start, but just digging into our already existing code and just understanding how to fix it. That was pretty good. So I was, of course, obviously super duper impressed. And also for half the rate compared to what I paid in Sweden, that was really ridiculous. Yeah.
Was it 50% different?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could imagine.
Hourly rate, yeah. It's insane. Yeah, so I pinned down some value points that maybe it's not obvious, that it's not like the textbook style that everybody is talking about all the time, but I think these things I wish I knew before I started this whole project. It's obvious things like, do they have the right, can they write the right code? Are they within my budget, etc. But other things than that you can also look at. So, as I mentioned, do they have a higher number of staff? It doesn't have to be like for every single smaller project. It's not like, oh, it has to be a super big software house, this necessarily. But for me, this was really helpful. Because, as I said, if someone's sick, maybe then someone else can jump in. You have a project manager that's really caring about your particular project. With the Swedish folks, I was more or less the project manager and the quality assurer and everything else except doing the code. And that's pretty nice to have that. So as a client, you just want to give the project away and be involved in discussions and following the process in Jira or whatever you want to use. And that's pretty much it. You don't want to be like sorting problems when someone's sick or having delays because something is happening. Shouldn't be on my table. So if you have a higher number of staff working on the same roof, you eliminate those risks, I think. Another tip is if you can find any negative words about them online. That's pretty obvious. Also, you check that always. And if you find negative words about them online, it doesn't necessarily need to mean that they are so mean and bad. It can only be that they are just not so good in finding the best matching clients, because that's what it's all about. I haven't met one single developer that is like a bad developer, but some are not so good at finding the best matching clients for their skills and for their resources and for the time that they have. And others are really good at that, like the Polish people, they were really good at that. So that's like a really, really good learning that I found out between these two aspects. Are they using a designated quality assurer that tests everything before you showcase it to the client? My first dev house in Sweden obviously didn't have that. So they just build something and then they tell me it's done. Then I go in and test and I see it's not working, or something else is now not working. But the Polish ones, they had someone with the title quality assurer, the testing everything, and we were like really tight in Jira. She was the best. So that's also something that I would, if I gonna build an MVP again, I would need to make sure that the team that I hire, they actually have someone that is only doing that, only testing stuff.
So you mentioned before that the first developer company didn't have a project management tool. And
maybe they had, they probably did have. It's just they didn't include me in it, so I don't know.
So it was blind for you.
It was totally blind for me.
Okay.
Yeah, we only used like email and phone calls. That was like the only thing that yeah.
And how was the experience with the next one?
Yeah, so they used Jira and Slack.
Okay.
And that was, of course, for me, a totally different world. I could clearly see what they were working on, the process, what has been done, what is coming up next.
Did you use any screen recording solution between those communications, or it was mostly text chat? And
no, yeah, it was not so much recording, I cannot say no. Now, what should I use that for? I don't know.
Pardon?
What should I use that for?
Like showing a bug, like when you're testing it.
Yeah, you mean, yeah. No, I didn't have to, because I never found any more bugs, because their quality assurer took care of that before I had to.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I mean. As a client, you don't want to see bugs on an MVP that you just send away. Like, you have a project, you don't want to be backfired with bugs.
Hopefully.
Yeah, of course. No, of course it happens, and anything can happen along the way. Maybe the client's sitting on a shit computer that it cannot, like, that's different. But then there is a valid excuse. But if you come into a 404 page on any computer, it's like,
that's a 404 page.
That's exactly, yeah. So that's something that it depends also on the MVP that you want to build. If it's something that's super small, and if you're a bit tech savvy yourself, and if maybe you really enjoy doing these things, then it's different. But for me, I just want to give it away and then have a product by the end of the deadline, and that's pretty much it. And be involved in discussions and be involved in Jira and stuff like that, so I can see what's going on. Yeah. So me and my ex-boyfriend, we were sitting like 2-3 hours every night after work to do quality assurance work. We pinned this stuff down in an Excel sheet that they then shared in a Google Drive. And there was like, so the most pressing bugs were red, the not so pressing bugs were orange, the solved bugs were green. The solved bugs, but then caused another bug to happen, were like yellow or something. And then we had purple, turquoise, and some other colors also for other things. And it was like, at the end, I should have saved this sheet because it's ridiculous. At the end, it was just, you couldn't even understand anything of it. And that is, of course, not how you should work. Yeah. So what you can ask the developers, like, so this talk is obviously from a client's point of view. So ask the developers you want to hire, what tools are you using? Like, what are you doing? So as I said, we used Slack and Jira, and I think that was awesome. For me, that was working really, really well. So that's also a good tip. But it's like, if you have something that you really like and you're used to working with already, you can, as long as you have something and it's not an Excel file only, that's good. Also, as a client, obviously invest in your due diligence. You can just talk with the software developers on Skype, see if you can get a nice feeling. Yeah, as I said, also there you can ask them more about the references that you can find on the reference list. See if you can find, if they have built something that is like what you want to build, only more advanced. So as I said, my first developers, they had built something very similar, but much, much less advanced. And that should have been a signal to me that then I should investigate more if they can really do this or not. So that's also a good tip. If they've done something more advanced, then you know that, okay, this is probably going to work. And if you're going to remember anything from this presentation, I would also 2 developers. Are you 3, you're developers also, or you're a startup doing, so you're more from the client's point of view, no? Or are you also doing code?
Based on what I heard from you, I'm doing what you did with developers. So it's kind of the same.
Oh yeah, okay.
Category.
Yeah, cool. So you're more on the client's point of view, yeah. You're not a software developer taking on clients for code work, no?
No. So the
Yeah. And the other, are you software developers or are you more client, if you have to choose?
I created a own app just as a hobby project without skills, and then it was really successful, so now I hire developers to actually do my app. But after seeing this, I think he's not so good anymore.
No.
Because I do all the quality assurance.
Yeah, but then you also, if you know beforehand that that's the plan, then it's different.
But I think it's important to emphasize on the work relation you have, because sometimes you can hire the developers yourself and manage it yourself, which could be cheaper than working with an agency. Well, with the agency, having quality assurance and project manager, these cost money.
Yeah, of course. It depends on what it is that you want to do and how tech savvy you are yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can write code, then obviously, then you're in a totally different position than I was. I cannot do any code.
And the thing is, I do have an outsourcing company who have 50 people, and sometimes he's like, he cannot do it. And I say, hey, you have colleagues, just ask them. So he's just telling me like, he's not aware how to do it. And then I'm like, why are you working like in a big company, just ask other people? And so I feel like, even though he would have all of his advantages, he doesn't use it. So, and that's like why I feel a little bit unhappy with him sometimes.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, also at the moment. And after this again.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, what can I say? Like, we can have more discussions afterwards if you want to with your particular project on hand.
Sure.
But for my particular project that I did and for the skills that I have, which is more business and not so much tech, it was just brilliant for me to have that full stack team to work on it. Yeah. And you're a software developer or are you more a client? If you have to choose.
I attend coding bootcamp, so I know a little bit how to code, and that makes decisions easier. But right now I'm in a project where I have a full stack developer, but she's leaving the project, so I will be confronted with the situation.
Oh yeah.
Agency,
okay. Yeah.
And I wanted to know about some things I should look for before.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you sound a bit like the position I was in also when I started looking for my Polish ones. Yeah. Yeah, no, we can also, if you want to discuss. I really, really love this topic, I must say. It's also because I really wanna pursue a career in this after my maternity leave. I got twins last year. The year after you get your boys, the same age. So now it's time to get back in the professional life, and that's why I have this talk, and that's why I wrote this article, and that's this is really something that I'm passionate about because of this experiences, and I can see in the startup world how tricky it can be really to hire people. And it's not only software developers, it's also if you're going to construct a house or build a home. Like, how do you know if you haven't done it before? It's the same in every area. Yeah, super tough.
And when you're technical, it's a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
What you're speaking right now, I can understand how you must have felt. But I outsourced for over 10 years. I'm a software developer for 17 years. But I was tricked. And I can imagine how easily you can be tricked by saying, oh, this bug takes 5 minutes, but actually it takes a lot of time. They just fake it until they make it.
Exactly. Exactly.
How it works.
Exactly.
So,
and that is exactly this also, this point here, point 6. Because if it's something that you should remember, it's this: if you find a developer house and they constantly say this, yes, not a problem, we can fix that. Don't you worry, it's all good. Just put it in the list and we take care of it. They can say it once or twice, but if they always say that, of course it was super nice. The first ones in Sweden said that all the time, and I was like, oh, thank you, that's so nice.
It only gives you
less
one
problem.
night of good sleep.
But then the Polish ones, they were actually, because there was a few things, I don't remember exactly now what it was I was asking for, but they were a bit like, nah, I would recommend not to do that with us at least, because this is these reasons. And then at first I was a bit like, what the fuck? But then when I thought about it, so that's exactly what I wanted to say. If that is the truth, don't tell me, yes, we can fix it, and then you don't have the time or the skills or the people to fix it. Then you're just going to end up with me being super disappointed. So that's something, you don't have this, not a prestigious thing or anything. Just be honest and transparent. Like, I don't know that language, so sorry. You should go to somebody else. It's all about this matchmaking thing. So as I said in the beginning, the most important thing when you're doing this is to find the best match for your project.
Just about the match, I would like to share some insights.
Please.
Like, you guys are developers, you are at least trying development. Each language is so different. And when I have an agency for 10 years. In the last 4 years, I've been only doing one exact technology, React, nothing else, just React, JS, and React Native. And I can argue with you more than that if you keep getting any type of projects, then that's not a good matchmaking.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Think about good matchmaking.
And I can understand from a developer's point of view, if you get a really cool client and you're like, I cannot do this, but I can learn quickly. I can sit up every night and I will just learn. And then I will do it for them anyways, and I will make all this money. And not a good idea, I think.
Absolutely.
Because it will backfire you. The product won't be maybe as what the client had in mind in one way or the other. So
I wish the agency in Poland is the one I know, that they somehow I got an inspiration. He was a speaker, and they named themselves something around React, and I got an idea. I said, I will also name my agency, and I call myself React Geeks.
yeah, that's clever. That's really clever, because then you attract the right clients, and then you don't have to have these problems. And of course, you can always like develop yourself and your skills, but you shouldn't do that on the cost of a client. You should do, when you're pressing on the hours, you should do that on trainings, like outside of your hourly.
In some agencies that you see, they have, I don't know, 20 people, and they have a list of technologies that they can work as like 50, then it doesn't make sense, because you can be an expert on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
For example, if you're an expert in, let's say, Python, you must be at least using it hands-on 24/7, I mean, every day, at least for 2 years, to be an expert in that one language. Now, then you're not an expert in the other languages. But that's not the case in a lot of agencies. They list down a lot of technologies, but the number of developers they have does not match the number of technologies they provide.
Yeah.
So that what means is that, for example, in the last 18 years, my technology list might be 50, but if I open Java today, I don't understand where is the save menu. But when I open any project in React, I know everything, because I've been doing it for the last 4 years.
And then you will do stuff faster also with the client. There will be less hours. It will be a better product.
The net amount is much cheaper.
Exactly. So if it would be a super junior doing the same thing, it would take a lot of hours, and it would end up being the same price anyways, even though the junior would be cheaper. So it doesn't really make sense to only look at the price. I mean, make your homework really important and know what it is that you want in very detail. Like I did this really rigorous document with like as far as I could do with no tech skills, only a Word document, pinning down exactly what it is that I need. And then very important to be willing to change that in a dialogue with the developers. Because not only can they write code, they can, or in the developer house, they are working with MVPs maybe all the time. So they probably know, like, I would highly recommend that we do twist it a little bit like this because of these and these reasons. Things that maybe I didn't think about when I was just taking down my document or pinning down the things in my document. So that's very important also to have it in your head and then be open and flexible to change things, like an agile methodology. That I think was one of the biggest learnings that I learned pretty early on in this project. Exactly what we were talking about. Don't pay for your developers' training. It's just not fair, I think. But as I said, I also understand from developers' point of view that it's very nice to maybe train on your client's budgets or to do training on your client's budget, but it's just not fair to the client and the outcome is not going to be good. So you can ask them as a client, like, how many years have you been working in this language, or what have you been doing in this language before, and like how skilled are you? What did you say? Are you more a junior or a senior? If you're a junior, that's fine, but maybe then we can also add a senior for some things, some functionalities, whatever. This is also very important. It sounds really goofy, I know, I'm professional, but I don't know if you've ever experienced it. I do it all the time. If I feel that there's just something wrong here, and I cannot say exactly what it is, but it just does not feel right. That's a feeling I had with my Swedish developers, and it was a valid feeling. I cannot today say it was because this and this and this, but in a very early stage, I felt it was something that was just telling me that no, hold, investigate a bit more. You don't have to sign the contract just because you have been taking so many beers together already and you're like buddies. It's okay. Huh?
Or the developer is vegan.
Exactly. You don't have to sign the contract because of that. But if you become buddies, it's a little bit, it feels a little bit odd to just, we've been doing all this, we're spending so much time together, but no, I will go somewhere else. Bye. You know, it feels bad, but it's totally fine to do that. Yeah. Or ask more, and you just pause it a little bit and investigate a bit more if you get a bad gut feeling. Exactly, be friends with the developers for sure, but maybe after the project is launched. So that's exactly what I did. We were super good friends, and I think that's really one of the main reasons for why they always put me in the last in line always. You can imagine what I felt like after I had a deadline for 3.5 months, and in months like 7 or almost 8, this is what they told me then is what was breaking it for me. They said, yeah, you know, Linda, I know we're late, but there have just been so many other projects that's been more pressing than yours, so we just had to launch those first. And I was like, okay, so you're like 8 months and you had to launch other projects. How can my project not be pressing, guys? Yeah, and I said that happened just because we were friends. Yeah.
I can agree a lot with this point because in the 10 years of my agency world, I regret the only thing that I did not fire fast. The same as Gary Vee, if you guys know him, says hiring is based on guesses,
Yeah.
firing is based on analytics.
Yeah.
You have a lot of information about somebody when you fire them.
Yeah, exactly.
So firing is like 8 months, waiting for 8 months until you fire them. 4 or 5 months, and then you. I think from you we can take a blueprint of when to fire. Yeah, and that should. After the session, I would like to hear more about your insights on how to and when to fire.
Yeah, that's of course really different from every project to like. I think it's hard to give a blueprint saying like if these things happen, you should fire that person, because it's really more than that. I think for me it was the realization that they are just not going to be able to launch what I had in my head. It would be a really light version of that, and then if they do manage to do 100% and they solve all the bugs and everything's finished, then I will have to pay the rest of it, and then I will have absolutely no budget left for some other developers that could actually do a better job.
Yeah.
So, but for sure they are. But I think it's also you have to go with your gut feeling a lot on that one as well. Yeah. Some points that not so many people always talk about when it comes to writing the contract. But as we were talking about also, if you get a bad feeling along the way before you sign anything, it's okay to take a pause and say, guys, could you just answer these questions beforehand, and then we can go on, move onwards, because I have a bad feeling. Just be open and transparent. Like, are you really sure that you can do these functionalities? What's going to happen in 6 months? Like stuff like that.
Excuse me, a point here. How would you freeze features in a contract? Is that a good practice that you do it based on the wireframe, or would you use, as you mentioned, based on user stories? What is your recommendation?
Freeze points in contract.
Like if we say XYZ features, how would you? Because a feature can have like an extra small button could extend 3 days of work.
Yeah. Now I see it more as like if there are minor things like a button like that, that's fine. But if there are bigger things like the 404 page after trying to register, that is a big no-no for me. Then you mean by freezing? You mean like canceling the contract?
By freezing, I mean we agreed upon these terms, and these are the features that we agreed 3 months ago when we signed the contract, and now your requirements are changing. So how would you freeze the UI, the requirements in the contract? Would you put an annex, your entire mockup? Would you put like a click dummy?
Yeah, exactly. Like a click dummy, I think is a good thing. Yeah, also depending on the project that it is that you're building. I don't think it's one blueprint fits all. It totally depends on what it is and the level of technology and how advanced it is that you want to build. But if it is like, if they manage to do like the simple things first, and you see the contract is flowing and everything is going accordingly to the contract, and then you get more advanced stuff, and you get a bad feeling, and you're starting to see that this is actually not really flowing as good anymore. Then I would maybe not freeze it or cancel it, but I would ask about it, and I would expect the developers or the project manager or whoever it is that me as a client is talking to, that they can explain the stuff better, so that I would understand from their point of view also. Maybe something happened. Maybe they had to change developer, and that's why I feel that some things are going a bit weird. And that's a valid excuse. And then that's okay then, that it's like a level of time where you have this patch making, and that's just life, it happens. But as I said, also it can happen once, but if it happened 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it's not so good. Yeah. That's what we were talking about in the beginning there. Yeah. So think about if you want to put it on a fixed price or rolling hours. I had it on a fixed price, and then after that, rolling hours. And then we agreed on the rate for the rolling hours already before signing the contract, so you can get maybe a better deal, or maybe not. If they really have a super fixed price that they use for everyone, that's also okay, of course. And it makes sure, of course, to include this hourly rate, what happens after launch. Include that already in the contract. I think, I don't know, but I have a feeling that many people don't think about that. They just think about launching the MVP and that's it. And we have a contract for that and a price for that and everything. But after that, that's when the real work starts, is after the launch. So make sure to include that also already in the contract, because it's a bloody hassle to change developers and contractors. After that, you want to use the same ones, provided that they have been doing a good job, of course. Then you want to use those again also for updates and support and everything. And this we also touched a little bit. Do they use different hourly rates? Do they have juniors and seniors? And do they have different rates for those? And what are those rates? And are they transparent about it? Like my first developer house, I don't even know the level of the developer that was like the head of my project. There were probably also other ones working with it, but I don't know. I didn't know anything about what was going on under the roof, you know? And then with the second one in Poland, they told me, this is senior, this is a junior, this is the price for the senior, this is the price for the junior, and they will be working with these things separately, blah, 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 and it's all open, you know? And that's very important, I think, if you have a bigger house, a bigger project, that you pin those things down already in the contract also, so you know exactly what's going on.
Let me ask a question here. How did you make sure an hour worked was an hour paid?
Yeah, well, I think you're better to explain that than me, because I also heard developers that are, I heard both sides. There are developers that are working a lot of hours, but then they only bill maybe a fraction of those. Maybe they are working 5 hours, but they only send an invoice for, or they what's it called? File for maybe 2 hours only, because they want to make it look like they are really skilled and good and they are really fast. Maybe they want to level up in career or something, and then it can go the other way around also, of course.
So in my experience, I usually use Upwork. So that's okay, they take screenshots every 10 minutes randomly. And I'm so technical as well, so it's a totally different story for me. But I'm trying to see how a non-tech co-founder will do it. There's another tool if you're not using Upwork. It's called Upstaff.
Mm-hmm.
That also takes screenshots.
Okay.
You can even tune it to 3 times 8 minutes. It randomly takes a screenshot and also takes the keystroke and mouse movement, and it shows
Wow.
the bar green and yellow.
Wow.
Red. So
I would get a little feeling of maybe that's a little bit too much, like maybe that's a little bit like, I don't know, maybe you have to do it with the Indians, but I would feel
that's racist.
I don't know, I would feel a little bit weird as a client if I know that they are really tracking them that hard.
It's pretty much common in remote work. I'm doing remote work for 10 years now, like all those 10 years. When you work remotely, you do want to track time, track efficiency.
But do you think it could be like a psychological thing for the developer, that they would actually, maybe some of them do a not as good relaxed job as they could have if they were not that monitored?
It's a common thing, especially in Upwork.
It depends if they're used to it also, maybe.
Pardon?
Maybe if they're used to it, it's not a big deal.
Like this screenshot thing, I remember I was doing it in 2008 and 9, and still I was reviewing the screenshots and their keystrokes, and I was having daily meetings. And trying to ask, hey, why were you stuck on that task for a long time? But probably for a non-tech co-founder, that was my curiosity. For a non-tech co-founder, will that even add value or not? Like if you have a tool where you can open every day and you see 8 rows, one row shows 1 hour, and then you see a lot of screenshots.
It totally depends. I would say for the Swedish ones that I used, I would definitely want to see that. Definitely.
Yeah, and then you can argue with them that why are you stuck on this one feature for a long time? Regardless of being kind of privacy freak and stuff, because you give your consent that I'm allowing the software to take my screenshot, and I'm not gonna do anything weird.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, I think.
But it depends, because with my Polish developers, I would not want that, because I also wouldn't feel comfortable in it, and I want them to work more the way that they are used to, so with more free hands in a way, and be more flexible.
Yeah, I also have the feeling like if you see always the screenshots, then you have a responsibility actually to check if they do everything correct.
And that's extra work.
And that's what I don't want. I want them to basically have
you want to be able to trust
and I don't
trust
want
them.
to control anything, and I want him to feel responsibility for his work, and if I would overwatch him, I feel like that I'm in the role. Even though like a few months ago I would be so happy to have actually that, because I was like thinking that he was working on another project and still charging me, and so I didn't really have the possibility to control it, except the comments when they were uploaded and stuff like this. But
so you prefer an output-based framework than?
Yeah, but I have a feeling that his output is too low, so that's why I would like to actually check if his CEO is giving him other tasks. But but normally I have. Like the ideal situation is that you can just trust them, and then you don't have to check, and then it's also better for me because I don't want to check it basically.
I see. It's not an extra duty for you.
Yeah, and also feel like the work is better if he can just do what he wants to do and doesn't feel like everything
watched.
is like watched.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I totally agree with you. I think it's also. I'm very result-based. I don't care how they work, what tools they are using. Use Word, Excel files, whatever. All I care about is the result. Give me a product within the time frame that is working and that is doing what we agreed on, and I'm happy. It doesn't matter if you have this monitoring processes or you're using the most advanced project management tools or whatever. It doesn't matter.
How is that in your platform, Boris? Do you, how your freelancers are working?
So usually the way the customers work is that most of them are quite technical. So they, at the beginning of the project, they know how much time each task will take. So they communicate with developers that they have expectations to be done this time, because they know it takes that much time. And most of the cases it works this way.
I see. So no straight monitoring tool?
No, not really. I've done extensive research on that with surveys on my own devices.
And your developers, your own developers, you don't do the same?
In our team, no. So usually I would say when there is a problem with delivering a task, there are usually two problems. Either he or she doesn't have the skills.
Okay.
The other option is that they're not motivated. So either two of them, most of the times when they work remotely, they're quite motivated. So it's always problems with the skills. And it's for us, it's like in the second week, we can see if someone has the skills or not. That's why we started to hire people. We hire like 2 people. We tell them up front it's a trial. 2 weeks it's a trial. We give them tasks, and we know quite well how much time each task takes. And it's quite easy and fast to see, if somebody's going to deliver or not. And right now, we actually have this case. We hired 2 people. We taught them it's a trial. And one of them wasn't experienced with Firebase, and he needs double the time than a person who has skills.
And what's your measure? You track it somewhere on an Excel sheet and then you fire it at some point?
No, we use Trello, but we're going to switch to Jira because we're getting a bigger team. So we have like sprint planning, and we agree, what we're going to build this week.
Story points?
Yeah, story points, and then we have expectations. I mean, sometimes it's, if you want like 80% delivery rate, You don't want 100 because it's might get too stressful.
Right.
And people start to complain that we're pushing too much. So you want to give some space as well.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. How is that with your case? You already have developers, you say? You have one second?
Yeah, we were working with Jira and also in sprints, and I think if you know about agile methodology, then it makes it easier because then it's, you still can control the process on the one hand, and still people have enough freedom to freely work until the end of the sprint. So
Yeah, I think that is the, as far as I understood, the most successful way to set it up in sprints like that, because I mean the world outside is changing all the time. We have a virus coming all of a sudden, things like that. Anything can happen, you know. You cannot suspect that you're going to follow your plan that you made last year and it's going to be exactly like that. This just doesn't happen, you know. And also if you do it in sprints like that every 3 or 4 weeks, then you're more better off in the competition also, because you can change stuff. Then you of course don't want
I
to change.
think for non-technical founders, because I have done myself with projects as a consultant service, and what I realized, you know, the best way for non-technical people is, you know, you collect as much as you, because so many clients, they struggle to explain what they need.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just need, you know, a web page, and they just need the messaging system. So, but you probably know it's things often can be more complicated than they look. You know, people have so much experience with software products, but they don't know what it takes to be built.
Exactly.
So one of the key tasks I think is to set the right expectations. So you talk to the client as much as possible. Maybe, you know, if they can't prepare it for themselves, you prepare like a project specification. And then you tell them, now these features will take that much time, and you communicate it up front. And, you know, they can't judge it for themselves, so you help them to make an estimation.
Yeah.
And then you work on project scope, so you get paid for the project scope, but
Okay.
so many times, like, I think the clients, they just want something small, and that goes outside of the project scope, so that they don't realize it's actually going outside of the project scope. So it needs to be communicated with them that it's gonna be paid on hourly rate.
It can also be a hassle from when the clients are not so nice in a project, when they want to change stuff all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Things that's already been built and like checked and it's done over with next sprint, and then you have a client, it's like, you know, this thing that you built 3 months ago, we have to change it. It needs to work like this instead, and it's completely different, you know.
But that wasn't part of the initial scope.
No.
So it goes on a different.
But that's also a tricky question, because as a developer, it's like, oh, you know, that's really annoying. I understand that. But as a client, if you find out that the world is going a different direction, then you also have to be able to change stuff and be flexible. So it's a bit of a dilemma there.
Yeah.
But if you pay for it, I reckon it should be fine for the developer to just add those hours. Like, it's the client's loss, because you have to pay for something that you're not going to use because you thought the world was like.
I think it's quite important that, you know, the mock-ups are built up front. Like maybe 2 weeks, depends on the project, but most mock-ups could be built in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, put all mock-ups up front so they know what's going to be built. Something gives you a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, for sure. Be as open and transparent as you just possibly
How
can.
did you do your mockups? Any tool suggestion?
So we use internally a lot of Figma. I know one of the developers in our team uses Adobe XD, but Figma is quite good. So I think I'm mostly using Figma. So the best would be, you know, build up all mockups up front.
Yeah.
Actually, if I had to build a product right now, what I would do is, you know, I have this idea for a project. I would just build a whole mockups. That would be clickable. You get so much feedback on the mockups.
Yes.
And then usability and UX UI won't be a problem after it's built. So you shorter product cycles.
Yeah, so you kick-started a little bit.
You get a lot of feedback, and
Yeah.
right there on the spot, I mean, people can see it, so they can click,
Yeah,
and they can say, okay, this button doesn't make sense, or these small things.
Yeah.
Because this happened for more and more. I mean, we were designers, and we were building features as we go and planning them. And in the end, when we completed more and more, there was so many. You remember you gave us feedback. We had so many UX UI glitches,
Right.
and they took us probably a month and a half to fix.
Right.
Until people can actually use the platform. Then I realized that I should have built all the mockups up front, get feedback, and then go for 2-3 months. Just
Kind of the same thing happened with my SaaS product.
Yeah.
Very much the same. I'm redesigning everything for absolute launch.
Yeah. That's how you save money. It's a smart way to save money. And it's so much easier for the developers themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Because they can see the whole scope, and if you also take the time at the beginning to prepare the database schema, and some people struggle to understand why you need to prepare a database, but it gives you so much flexibility. Maybe a week just prepare everything, and then later on you won't have any scalability issues.
I think it makes sense to write a playbook for building MVPs.
Yeah.
You kind of gather all this knowledge. I'm up for writing from technical perspective, and you guys can let me know.
You can start with these things and can add on a lot of other things also.
Start from that.
Yeah, sure. No, please do that. I would love to read it. Sure. I love MVPs. I absolutely love
MVPs. I need to see the other perspective as well. Not only writing it from technical perspective, also from the non-tech
from the client,
from the non-tech perspective.
You can have like 2 sides in the book. So the first side is from the client's point of view, and then you go over to the developer's point of view. Like the client said this story that you had in the beginning, and then you tell the same story, but from the developer's point of view. And then you can also get into the developer's head and understand that this is what life is like for a developer. It's not always so easy and charming.
Like right now, I'm hearing from Boris about Figma clickable mockup in 2 weeks. If we can deliver this kind of knowledge with some supporting probably video tutorials that any non-tech co-founder can onboard within 2-3 days, and start doing exactly like the entire mockup as we teach them, then they will have like an entire clickable dummy that they can go to any agency. They say, "Can you build it for me?"
That would be amazing.
And then you go to 3 of them and then pick the best one.
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing to have that, because it's also very good for the founder to go over the idea himself or herself to see like, this is what I was thinking first, but now when I see it like this, it doesn't make sense. So it's better that you do that and then you change it before you hand it over to the developers, start paying for it. Yeah. Very good idea. You should do that.
Sometime. Call Alex and tell him.
New business idea, Alex. It would kill me. But if you do it, I'm happy to help. Really. Yeah. So this is also touching what we were talking about. Prepare as much materials as possible for the first meeting with your developers. The first meeting is usually free of charge because they want to onboard you as a client. So if you're not so prepared, then you will be sitting there and chit-chatting and discussing of what your MVP could do and not do. And then you will get a better start and a more rapid start if you already thought about everything and did your homework, looked at the competitors, all of these things, pinned it down in your head or on a sheet or a dummy just like that. It's even better already at the first meeting. And then again, be willing to change stuff, because what you think in the beginning is not going to end up being the same thing at the end, because things will happen like even in 3.5 months, which is usually the case for an MVP. It's a golden time there, 3 or 4 months. A lot of things happen in the outside world in 3 to 4 months, so don't expect that the end result is going to be what you pinned down in the beginning in the first meeting. But anyways, as much as you can do your homework, the better, because you also give a more better impression to your developers. They will be like, oh, she really knows what it is that she wants, and they appreciate that. You don't want a client coming, wow, I want to build something like eBay, but yeah, could you help me? You know, it's better than to have a client. I want to build this platform. It's for these and these people. This should have these functionalities. Can you do it? Yes or no? You know, that helped me a lot.
User stories.
User stories, very important. Very important. Yeah, very important. I also had, I forgot to mention, but that was also in my
Just
papers.
the user stories, the entire agile practice, Scrum
Yeah.
is agile.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. From my experiences here with these two people on the each side of the scale, it's definitely the agile methodology and the Scrum based is
Way to go.
that I think.
New comes up.
Yeah, of course. But try to be as agile as you possibly can, even though it can be tough and hard, because in your head you have a dream of something to work in a special way. And then it's all making sense. And then in 4 months, something happens in the outside world and it doesn't make sense anymore. And then it's so tough to reprogram your dream in your head. I know that, but you just have to do it. You just have to do it because you will have to do it sooner or later anyways. It's better to do it in the beginning than, yeah. Oh yeah, so you will save some money on that because, yeah, that's what I said, because the initial meeting is usually for free. So try to explain as much as possible already then. Yeah, the extra clear and overdo all communication. You don't, as a photographer, I have heaps of like industry words that I could use. Like you should build like this and this accordingly to these features of the camera, blah, blah, blah. They don't know, like developers, they don't know all the things in every industry that's out there. It doesn't make sense. Just skip your prestige and try to be very down to earth and talk about the results and what the product is supposed to deliver and what it's supposed to do for everyone. Yeah, that's the whole thing in working with developers. Help them understand your project, help them understand your dream, and be open and transparent about it. And yeah, we also touched that. Will they include you in the project management tool? I thought that was very, very good. It's not mandatory maybe, but for me it was really nice to see them working. It's like, I know that I'm paying for these hours and I can actually see that they also working these hours. It was a comfort for me. I don't have to have those screen recording stuff. Jira is good enough.
Another way to do it is if the person is, doesn't want to get involved with the project management to it, it's like having the calendar like weekly calls.
Yeah.
Just,
yeah, that's my next here.
It's sort of kind of the same.
Yeah, for sure. But I find it really good also to be included in the tools. So I could see early on that, oh, now they will start working on this. Then I should explain this maybe a little bit more thoroughly. Stuff like that was helping the developers. So in that regard, I thought it was like a good thing for everyone to be involved, to have the clients involved. There's no reason for cut the client out, incorporate them and take the client into the team, but don't expect the client to be a project manager or a quality assurer because of that, but they should still be there. So it's also a matter of openness and transparency and honesty. If I'm included in the tools, then to me it's like, yeah, they wouldn't do that if they weren't like an honest company.
Linda, how do you feel with technical jargon that was moving around in the project management?
The technical what?
Technical jargon, like the technical terms that they use in the tickets.
In the beginning, it was very tough, I thought. I had to Google like a lot. But they were also quite basic. It wasn't that overdoing it.
Like in finance.
It's like in finance.
It is. Of course, like when I started, I was really zero tech.
Okay.
Now I'm a little bit more tech, but not on the level that I would call myself tech savvy or being able to understand code in any way. But I did learn a lot of tech stuff during this project for sure. Yeah, it's very interesting.
That might be a point to be noted for our playbook.
Maybe, yeah.
Like basic technical stuff that we should teach non-tech co-founders.
Yeah.
Like what's an HTTP request?
I didn't even, yeah, exactly. And I didn't even know what the word deploy means.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like
I was
all
like,
definitions of these glossary of
was so obvious things. Like I've never heard that word before.
Awesome.
And they used the English. It was in the Polish people. So of course they used the English and they were, we're going to deploy these changes. And I was like, what are you going to do with it?
English, please.
No, but they were Polish. We could only speak English. There was no way around it. So, but I had to explain it, and I was like, oh, okay. But then I started using it like really naturally, and small things like that.
So you ask what deploy means.
Yeah.
Probably
You have to leave the prestige. All of this fact things. Just forget about it. It's not going to help your project. Just leave it.
But probably a lot of introverts, non-tech co-founders might.
They would just be like, they're gonna deploy.
Exactly.
They're gonna delete. Maybe it means delete. It probably means delete. Oh fuck! No, I'm gonna be poor. It's ridiculous. No, just ask. Yeah. And this with the weekly check-ins, of course, phone calls, emails, whatever, all the time. But I really think it's important to also do it if you can physically, and if not, over like a video call at least. Because this physical interaction that you have with people, you cannot, as much as you want to, take that away. It just does not work, because you get into another level of understanding if you have that. I think that was really important. Yeah, but you can do it over a video, Skype or Zoom or anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Probably
so
Skype not, but Zoom.
You don't like Skype? I used Skype a lot then.
Yeah, because that was invented in Sweden.
Yeah. That's not why, but
yeah, it was. It was a project from Sweden. And then Microsoft bought it.
From Estonia?
No, it was from Sweden. It's a Swedish company. It was a Swedish company.
That's not why I chose them. It was just the obvious pick for me for some reason. Yeah, as I said, I love the topic. If you want to discuss anything, feel free to reach out to my email address. I should mention my project that I built here, though, the whole thing. I totally lost my motivation for it. I was alone all the time. It was me and my investors, but the investors, they're just, they're just investing and then they're there and that's it. After this whole circus, and we had lawyers, we were so close going to court, and then I felt that was just, taking so much energy and so much, it was killing the dream in a way. And I'm that type of a person that when I have a motivation, I'm really producing like crazy a lot. And when the motivation is gone, it's completely gone. And then I'm like just sitting there, oh, fuck, how am I gonna do this? Hate it, really hate it. I have nothing in between. It's on or off. So when this circus happened, my motivation turned off. And so I moved to Berlin. It was in this period of time when the MVP had launched. Well, I found my partner, and that's why I moved to Berlin. So it wasn't because of the company, but here I was realizing, wow, this is the mecca for startups. Cool. I can probably find a co-founder here. And I tried, and I onboarded a couple, but it just did not work. I think it was the same thing there. I was too desperate. And that's another big story, but it just did not work. And then I had to take the decision because there were running costs, to have this platform up. I had like a couple of hundred photographers there, and people started to ask, are there any projects coming in? So at this time, I was using my own private money for marketing and stuff. And it didn't feel so cool to start marketing this when it was also not like there was just a soft launch. It wasn't even the final product as I had in my mind. That still today never existed. So I decided not my email address. When it's been like a process, but the final, like really take it down, that was only like half a year ago. It was only also because I got twins a year ago. So it was a little bit too much with 2 little boys around and this thing, and then trying to provide myself with something additional on top of that. It just does not work. So I had to cut back on stuff.
Yeah.